This is, without a doubt, one of my desert island flicks. Okay, everybody, today we're going all the way back to 1981 to look at what is easily one of my top 10, probably top 5 motion pictures of all times. We are going back to look at the one and the only Escape from New York. But before we go any further, before we dig into this gem anymore, once and again, and as always, to the trailer.
New York, 1997. The entire city is a walled maximum security prison. The bridges are mined. The rivers are patrolled. And the United States Police Force has everything under control.
I'm going in.
John Carpenter's Escape from New York, the high adventure of the future. One man must go in where no man has ever gotten out. And if he comes back alone, his nightmare has just begun.
Who are you?
John Carpenter's Escape from New York.
Heard you were dead.
This stuff is like gold around here, you know.
Hold on.
John Carpenter's Escape from New York. The greatest escape of them all is about to blow the future apart.
Okay, this motion picture was directed by the man himself. We are talking about one John Carpenter. I'm probably going to try to do these all in order right off the top of my head, so let's do this. We're talking, he did Dark Star. He did Assault on Precinct 13 and Halloween and The Fog and The Thing and Christine and Starman and Big Trouble in Little China and Prince of Darkness and They Live and Memoirs of an Invisible Man, In the Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, Escape from L.A., Vampires, Ghosts of Mars, The Ward. And you throw in that other stuff that he did too, you know, the cigarette burns and, you know, the whole body bags and all. You know, he did some other shit too. And of course, he did the Elvis movie, which I'm going to bring up in a little bit. Whatever. It doesn't make a difference. Let's keep moving. Okay, everybody, we got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get to work. Playing the one and only Snake Plissken himself, we are talking about the man, Kurt Russell. Let's do this. Of course, we're talking about he was in motion pictures like Executive Decision. He was in Used Cars, which you know I love, and it's one of my favorites of all time. And The Thing, and Overboard, and The Mean Season, which everybody has to see. And Big Trouble in Little China, Best of Times, which I've reviewed too, and Backdraft, and Captain Ron, and Soldier, and Dreamer, and Tango and Cash, and 3,000 Miles of Graceland, and Breakdown, and Tombstone. Jesus, how could I almost forget that? So, insane career. I mean, he did a bunch of shit too when he was just a little Disney kid and everything. So, big career, long career. Let's keep going. Played Hauk! Commissioner Hauk. Lee Van Cleef. Oh man, how cool can it get? Let's go. We're talking about For a Few Dollars More. We're talking about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and Sabata, and Death Rides a Horse, and Vice Squad, and the big Gun Down. I couldn't get the word out. Day of Anger, and The Grand Duel, and TV Gunsmoke, and he had that weird little short-lived show. I think it was in the early '80s, The Master. So it is what it is. Lee Van Cleef's a legend. Let's keep going. Playing El Presidente, Donald Pleasence, veteran of many times into the world of John Carpenter. Let's go. We're talking Prince of Darkness. We're talking about Halloween. And we're talking about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and Telephone, and The Last Tycoon, and The Great Escape, and You Only Live Twice, and The Eagle Has Landed, and Escape to Witch Mountain, and Will Penny, and Fantastic Voyage, for God's sake. So, it's Donald Pleasence. Why am I... Let's keep moving. Playing Brain! Harry Dean Stanton. You guys know I love me some Harry Dean Stanton. The guy's a legend. Let's go. Alien. We're also talking stuff like Christine, and Repo Man, and Wild at Heart, and The Green Mile, and Crystal, which everybody should see, and Pretty in Pink, and Slam Dance, and Red Dawn, and Paris, Texas is another sleeper movie everybody should see, and The Rose, and Private Benjamin, and Dillinger, and The Missouri Breaks. So, his career was monstrous. I mean, come on, let's knock off the shit. Playing Cabbie, Ernest, Borgnine. Let's go. The Poseidon Adventure. We're talking about Marty, and Convoy, and Flight of the Phoenix, and Barabbas, and The Dirty Dozen, and Ice Station Zebra, and Willard, and a little movie called Super Fuzz, or some people call it Super Snooper, whatever, it doesn't matter. The Devil's Reign, and The Greatest, and The Black Hole, and The Vikings, and he was on TV too. We're talking about, like Future Cop, Mikhail's Navy, Airwolf. Come on, you can hear the fucking thing coming at you right now. Whatever, it doesn't make a difference. He played Cabbie, and that's all we care about. Playing the Duke, Isaac Hayes. Let's roll. Beyond being a great musician and the composer of Shaft, he did pop up in some other things. We're talking like I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. We're talking about Posse, and Robin Hood Men in Tights, and Flipper, and Tough Guys, and Truck Turner, and TV. Rockford Files, Fresh Prince, The Hugleys, The Bernie Mac Show, and of course he was Chef on South Park. All the way up until the point where we lost him. It's a shame, it's sad, but Isaac Hayes, cool as shit. Playing Romero! Not a big career, but man, he's so memorable in this. You know what I'm talking about? We're talking about Frank Doubleday. Oh yeah, of course he was in Assault on Precinct 13. He was in the first nudie musical, and Nomads. And he was on TV, tons of TV, like Chips, and TJ Hooker, and Hill Street Blues, and Stingray, which I'm still going to talk about at some point, and Wonder Woman, and Starsky and Hutch, and The Incredible Hulk, and The Greatest American Hero. So he had a cool little career, mostly on TV. This and Assault on Precinct 13, that's what you're going to remember him for. And of course, playing Maggie, Adrienne Barbeau. Oh yeah. Of course, she was in Swamp Thing. Of course, she was in The Fog, and Creep Show, and The Cannonball Run, which I just reviewed. And of course, she was on TV in Maude, and Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Murder, She Wrote. She was on a TV show, Carnival, on HBO a couple of years ago. And Drew Carey's show, and General Hospital. And she was in that incredible motion picture, Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death, or some shit like that. So she was in a whole bunch of crazy shit. It's Adrienne Barbeau. You know her. Whatever. And just really quickly, there was some other rules of note in this thing that maybe the parts weren't as big, but you had some Carpenter regulars and you had some other faces, so let's just get to it. We're talking about, you had Tom Atkins. Come on, really? The Fog, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Lethal Weapon, and Maniac Cop, and Striking Distance, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. And you got Charles Cyphers. Dude, The Fog, Halloween, Honky Tonk Man, Big Bad Mama 2, Assault on Precinct 13, I Say No More. And of course, you also had Susan Hubley, who beyond being Mrs. Kurt Russell at the time, was in Hardcore, she was in Vice Squad. She also popped up in that Elvis made-for-TV movie that Carpenter directed and Kurt Russell starred in. She played Priscilla. So, there's other faces in this. There's other people. You're going to remember them just the way it goes. Alright everybody, I'm going to do this in 90 seconds or less so I can keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving so we could all get to where we'd much rather be. The summation, and if you don't know the story to this, I mean, Why are you even here? Let's get real. The motion picture starts out, you have a little bit of narration telling you what's going on in the world. That in 1988, the crime rate in the United States rose 400%. So basically, they just walled off Manhattan Island with a 50-foot containment wall and made it the country's maximum security prison that once you go in, you do not come out. Well, before you know it, a couple guys try to escape. They blow them up in the water. Doesn't make a difference. Next thing you know, a bus pulls in where you see one, Kurt Russell, a.k.a. Snake Plissken himself, getting off the bus, being led into the facility, and, well, you know, being photographed or whatever. Screen goes dark. You don't really care. Next thing you know, you see a little crisis going on. You see there's a plane in restricted airspace. Nobody really knows whose it is. What's this thing? Who's David 14? Turns out to be Air Force One, and they are kidnapping the president's plane, and they're going to crash it into a high-rise someplace. Yep, well, actually they do. And the president goes missing. Well, there's only one guy that they can think of to get the president of the United States out of this walled-off maximum security prison, and that is the recently brought in and convicted Snake Plissken. So he sits down with the chief of police, Bob Hauk. They have a conversation where he asks him to go and get the president. Yeah, Russell ain't really into the idea. Doesn't really make a difference, but he gets a little bit persuaded. Watch the movie, you'll get what I'm talking about. So he agrees to go in and get the president. They give him a couple shots, you know, for tetanus and shit like that. But before you know it, he finds out what they really did was they put 2 explosives in his arteries, and they will go off in 24 hours if he is not back with the president, and a little certain tape hanging around the president's wrist. In a briefcase. Doesn't make a difference. So Kurt Russell goes into New York. He lands his glider on top of the World Trade Center, goes into New York with 24 hours to rescue the president, finds out this is not really going to work out. It's almost impossible, but he winds up meeting some people along the way. He meets a cabbie who drives him around. He meets this cabbie and he takes him to the Brain. The Brain, who happens to be a former friend of his, can connect him with the man who has the president, a.k.a. Isaac Hayes, the Duke. Well, before you know it, Snake, Brain, Maggie, that's the Brain squeeze. They try to take the president, get the hell out of Dodge before anybody even knows, but they get caught by the Duke. At that point, they take Snake Plissken, they throw him into a wrestling match with Ox Baker. Well, Snake, well, he does well. I'm just going to let it go at that. You probably figured it out. But Brain now is an opportunist, and he says, well, I'm going to take the president, get the hell out of Dodge. That's all I need to do. He tries to escape. Everybody's looking for Brain. Snake takes off. He's looking for Brain. Everybody's trying to get the president. Everybody's trying to get out of Dodge. They all kind of group up near the end, and they're running from the Duke, who wants the president back so he can lead his parade of freedom down the whatever 69th Street Bridge or whatever the fuck is going on, and march everybody out for amnesty. That's the idea. Prisoners want amnesty. They're holding the president for hostage. Everybody says, well, we can't do that, so let's send Snake Plissken to rescue him. Is the way it goes. It's about that much of a movie. It's a rescue flick. Okay, everybody, does Escape from New York work? Do we even need to have that discussion? This movie works. This movie is legendary, and it is personally easily in my top 5 with, like, you know, Blade Runner and Halloween and, you know, the Star Trek 2 and whatever. It doesn't matter. This is a movie that if I only had a handful to pick and live in a deserted island, this would go with me. It's just the way it goes. But before we dig any further into it and do all that, let's get the big 3 out of the way. The directing, this movie's beautiful to look at. This is Carpenter in his prime. It's cool. Every shot is gorgeous. It's set up. It has that Carpenter style, that eeriness to it, that vibe to it, that just works. He knew how to frame a shot back then. He knew how to pace a movie, and this one shows. The writing's great. I mean, it is. It's great. We have what Carpenter and Castle came up with in this thing. It just works. You get to know Snake Plissken pretty quickly, and you get to understand him pretty quickly and see the kind of character he is and figure out a lot of the characters else in this motion picture simply by the writing. The writing's phenomenal. There you go. And the acting. You're kidding me, right? I mean, come on. I read the cast to you. And the thing is, not just Kurt Russell, who's phenomenal as Snake Plissken. I mean, he's really just doing Clint Eastwood. You know what I mean? He even said that. He said, I was imitating Clint Eastwood through most of this motion picture. And that's just the way it goes. I think he said when he found out Lee Van Cleef was going to be, he's like, well, how would I handle it? He goes, oh, I got to be Clint Eastwood to his Lee Van Cleef. And there he goes. But beyond the job that Kurt Russell did in this motion picture, the job everybody else did is great. Frank Doubleday is not a household name, but you remember his Romero character in this thing. 110%. It's one of the things that just grabs you. Kind of like he did in Assault on Precinct 13 when he was the one warlord. He just had something about him in these two flicks that make him stand out. You got the rest of the cast of characters, whether it's Borgnine, whether it's Barbeau, whether it's Tom Atkins, any of those, Charles Cyphers, they play off their roles so convincingly. It's just perfect. And even Isaac Hayes, who might not be really a seasoned actor and is more of a writer and musician and kind of like that, he is perfect as the Duke. The little looks, the little way he commands the stage when he's in front of that camera, it's just great. So, the acting, top notch. Now, let's get back to why this motion picture works. Well, it's a lot of levels. It's the perfect action flick, if you ask me. There's just enough dialogue, there's just enough action, there's just enough shit going on so that it moves along at what I've talked about before, a perfect pace. And let's be honest, the reason this motion picture really works is because Snake Plissken is the coolest fucking character probably ever put on screen. It's like Snake Plissken, Harry Callahan, and very few others. That character is a magnetic character. Everybody wanted to watch Snake Plissken, or everybody wanted to be Snake Plissken. Snake Plissken is a character who rolls along without really that much of a gigantic care in the world. His whole thing is just to move on and survive. He doesn't take shit from nobody. Everybody loves that kind of a character. He's a classic anti-hero. And if you put any other kind of a superhero character in this kind of a motion picture, I don't care whether it was John McClane, I don't care whether it was Martin Riggs, it wouldn't have really worked, because you needed a character that was almost an impossible to be character, an almost comic book type character to work in this kind of world. You couldn't have, Max Rokitansky working on the LAPD. You needed him out in the deserts of Australia, and you needed a character like Snake Plissken in this kind of a motion picture. This is a guy who in a normal society wouldn't really function well and really wouldn't get that far because he's just so anti-establishment. But in this kind of a motion picture, in this kind of a world, in this kind of an environment that Carpenter created and wrote, you can see why he would be the ultimate character, why he would be the coolest character. And there's enough of him that is human and realistic to make people gravitate to him and want to follow that character. Snake Plissken is simply what Escape from New York is about. And one of the things that's brilliant that they did in this motion picture, yes, most of you know that there was an entire reel of a movie thrown into the shitter that showed Snake Plissken robbing the reserve, depository, whatever the fuck it is, and taking all the cash and all that kind of stuff. And they left it out. And that was the best decision they ever made. You didn't need all that shit to show you what was going on with this guy. You got to meet Snake Plissken, and you seen what he was about just in the way he walked into the prison and just what that meeting with Bob Hauk. You found out everything you needed to know in a 3-minute conversation, and you like, okay, I get where this guy's coming from. I know who this guy is. I know what he's about. Let's roll. And that's one of the great things about this motion picture too, was everything revolves around that conversation between Snake Plissken and Bob Hauk. We find out that Snake Plissken used to be a special forces guy. He was the youngest man ever decorated by the president. So he was a war hero. Hauk refers to him as a war hero. And now you have a guy who has become an ultimate anti-establishment guy, from a guy who went from being kind of like part of the establishment. He was a part of the guy, this patriotic, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden now he just doesn't give a shit about anything. He doesn't care about politics. He doesn't care about he doesn't care about shit. And you're like, wow, what happened to this guy? And you never see that explained in the movie. And that was brilliant, because it's one of the things that makes you just fill in the gaps with your mind. What made this guy radically changed? Or what radically changed in the world or in society that made this guy so, jump off the bandwagon and go completely the other way and just divorce himself from everything else going on? Because that's the kind of character he is. He's divorced from everything going on in the world. He just doesn't care about what's going on with politics. He doesn't care what's going on in society. He's completely divorced himself from the whole thing, which makes you wonder what the hell took place in society to make this character take place, to make him who he is. I mean, obviously there's problems. The crime rate goes up 400%, and the police turn into a military force and start locking up everybody on shit has gone wrong. But something has made this guy turn against all of it and just basically walk away. And that's so intriguing, and it makes you come up with a million stories. It's one of the things that would have been perfectly to discuss in Escape from L.A., but they made that into a retread of Escape from New York instead of a sequel that would have explained some of the world outside. So there went that movie, one of the most soul-crushing things that ever came out on film. But we always have Escape from New York, and that thing was perfect. And since we're on that note, let me get back to one more thing about Snake Plissken, which is the movie. Snake Plissken, even though he was kind of presented that way, or I shouldn't say presented that way, described that way by John Carpenter himself, saying, Snake Plissken doesn't care about anybody, he doesn't care about anything, he just wants to move on, blah, blah. But is that really the guy we got in the motion picture? I mean, he blatantly talks about, hey, we were buddies, Harold. When he's talking to Brain, he goes, remember what they did to Bob? You know what they did to Fresno Bob? So he's upset about things that have happened to his friends. And in one of the great scenes is what happens at the end of the motion picture when Brain dies and Maggie is going to stay behind and take on the Duke. Snake knows she's going to die. He knows she ain't going to make it. And he looks at her and he gives her this look and he just says, Maggie, come on, he's dead. Come on. Let's get out of here. This is your chance. This is your chance to get the hell out of here. We can make it. And when he sees she isn't going to do it, he gives her this grin of respect and hands her the gun and he just walks off. Yes, he's still taking care of business and doing what he has to do, but you see, there is a humanity to this guy. He's not some robot, some completely unaffected, unattached, emotionless fucking thing. He's just a guy. He's a hardcore guy, but he's just a guy. So he does have emotional attachments and he can wind up getting involved in the lives of people around him. He's not just some total prick. But he is a hard-charging kind of dude. And let me point out, too, also, I love the beginning and the end, just because literally it starts off so cool. The beginning of the movie literally is all these credits. I mean, I'm talking before the movie even starts. It's just all these credits where you get hit with one of the greatest soundtracks, one of the greatest scores ever recorded to a movie. One of Carpenter's best, easily. Where it's just literally, they go through a list of credits that's long enough it should have been at the end of the movie. I mean, everybody's in it. And you just hear that incredible Snake Plissken theme, that Escape from New York theme. And you get this eerie buildup of probably about 4 minutes before the movie even kicks into gear, that you're just listening to that music and it sets the tone so friggin' perfectly. It was brilliant. The movie hadn't even started yet. You haven't seen a single actor. And it started it off perfectly. And then it goes into that, Jamie Lee Curtis computer voice fucking thing about the city. It is just spectacular. And that theme comes back at the end when Snake walks away with the tape. And he gives you that typical Carpenter, screw the future, everything ain't going to turn out the way you want. And Snake Plissken really does not give a shit about society or the world anymore. He's just rolling that tape out, that tape that's supposed to dissuade the war because of nuclear fusion and all this other kind of shit. The one thing that's going to save humanity, and he's destroying it and throwing it on the ground and walking away. That is as dark a beginning and as dark as an ending as you could actually put in a motion picture and in a film. They shot it. It bookends this masterpiece. Oh, God. Now, is there anything bad in this flick? Well, there's bad in every movie. You've heard me say it a lot. I'm not going to say bad. I'm just going to say there's things in here that are a little bit convenient or a tad goofy. I mean, the idea that Cabbie drives around and just always shows the hell up at the most important times. He's running from the crazies. There's Cabbie to get him out of the situation. He's running from the Duke. Hey, there's Cabbie to get him out of the situation. Okay, really? The idea that Snake is the only guy they could have sent in? I mean, let's be realistic. The glider is there. There must be somebody that can fly it. Why didn't you send in that guy? That kind of shit. You know what I'm talking about? There's little goofy inconsistencies here and there where you just got to roll with it and take them as they are. Everybody, again, if you get a shot, get out there and watch Escape from New York. Forget Escape from LA. I know there's some people out there that actually prefer that over the original. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're watching. By any stretch of the imagination. I think Carpenter said he even liked LA better than New York. Showed you why he fucking went off the rails and became a shit director later in his career. Escape from New York is a masterpiece. When John Carpenter was in his prime, when Kurt Russell was possibly at his coolest, and at time making this really dark, non-apologetic, no light at the end of the rainbow type of motion picture, which really had a 70s vibe more than an 80s vibe. In the 80s vibe, the hero could just do anything about it. In this movie, it was like, nope, it's all going to turn to shit in the end anyway. Whoopsies! This had a 70s vibe to it, even though this was shot in 1981. It's that dark, gritty, tech sci-fi type of flick that you just don't get very often. That just works. It stands up there with like the Terminator. It's actually probably better than even the Terminator. I mean, this is the movie of its genre that there was a million little copycats of along the line. All right, everybody, be good. Take care. Stay out of trouble. Be kind to a stranger. Be there for a friend. But most of all, never, and I mean never, take any bullshit from anybody. See y'all soon.